You're listening to NIL Now, a podcast dedicated to the name, image, and likeness of today's college and high school athletes.
So we're going to explore the crazy and wildly interesting world of name, image, and likeness.
NIL Now, covering the latest sports business headlines and keeping you informed on the nation's top performers. This is NIL Now, where the stars of tomorrow are getting noticed today.
It's the Wild Wild West, but we're wrangling it in.
Presented by Headline Studio and Reddit. Here are your hosts, Lauren Sisler and Kevin Jones.
Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of NIL Now, a production of Headline Studio and Reddit. We are out wherever you listen to your podcast, so be sure to subscribe already. We don't want you to miss a beat. We're going to jump into some headlines momentarily, but first and foremost, I just got to talk to my buddy KJ here about the awesome weekend that was back in Lane Stadium, back in Blacksburg, hanging out with him and his friends of Triumph NIL, doing their thing and bringing back some of the great legends that were Virginia Tech football, including himself.
Yes, sir.
And some other great athletes. It was fun, man. It was awesome to see you guys just come back, get to yuck it up, hang out, spend time together. And you, KJ, were in your element, let me tell you.
You too was in your element. You did some interviews. It was cool to see you doing that and piggyback kind of what we do at the show, like to do it in person at the alma mater. It was a good time.
Yeah. So obviously Triumph NIL, KJ has been helping spearhead, this organization for quite some time now. And I guess this technically was your official launch party to essentially bring the fans and the community sort of closer to what you're doing with the student athletes at Virginia Tech, giving them opportunities. And I think it's great just to help people to understand. And one thing that you and I talked about specifically, there was, this is not just about NIL space and giving these players opportunities to collect a paycheck. It's so much more than that. And I would just love for you to reiterate for our friends at home why this is significant and why this is maybe different than some of the other initiatives that we've seen thus far.
What we did was, it's our 1 year anniversary at Triumph, but what we did was we co-branded with the University Club at Virginia Tech and had a triumphnil.com, basically a content platform for the fans so that they can engage directly to the student athletes. But the platforms allow the student athletes to have, virtual meet and greets. They can sell all types of things that's related to their name, image, and likeness. So when donors and fans want to give to the program, they no longer have that question in their mind to like, hey, where's this money going? So you're actually getting something for the money that you donate or purchase. There's an exchange happening. So what we've been doing is trying to be innovative with our platform and our content so that fans to feel more comfortable to support. There's a level of transparency there. We're wrangling that Wild Wild West.
Yes, the wranglers that be, and some of the people obviously there to support you all. It was great to see Michael Vick, another Virginia Tech great.
It was good to have him back in the building and be doing something together, being a part of the brotherhood and doing this together. So he's considered our first legacy athlete. So from an NIL perspective, we signed him to Triumph NIL as a legacy athlete. So those same things, the fans can go and see what Michael Vick is doing today. Maybe watch him play golf. He might even have a podcast where we, have conversations back and forth, and people can tune into that. So this platform is really one of a kind. Excited to be a part of it.
NIL headlines.
So that segues great into our first headline because you guys at Triumph are doing it the right way. There's some people that aren't so happy about the way things are happening at Syracuse right now. And our producer there, Dean Zolkowski, the Syracuse man himself, has got a smirk on his face. I don't know if he's happy or sad, but
do we have some more boogieing going on?
The Boeheim boogie.
I wasn't gonna say that. I wasn't gonna say the first part, but
I did it for you. So I want to get your take on this, Kevin. I think it's really interesting just to kind of hear how there is still very much a divide that's definitely happening within these school systems, these universities. So Adam Weitsman, the Syracuse super booster, who we've talked about many times on the show, said last week he will no longer support Syracuse University with NIL deals. Weitsman told Syracuse.com he felt pushed away by the school's chancellor, Kent Severud, because that is so rude, right?
or severed from, like, cut off. You know, it's a lot of layers there. And let me interject before you go further. Adam, come over to the Hokies. We could use some of that support if you want to continue to be in the NIL space.
Yeah, because, Adam, he flexes them muscles with some of those celebs, right?
Exactly.
That he was real big on bringing some different celebrities into the fold, attending games with some of the potential players. And that was kind of his big shtick there. Yeah,
Weitsman, holla at your boy. TriumphNIL.com. Hit me up. We can have several conversations on how you can stay in the game, my man.
And by the way, this is all a fair plug here, because obviously now it's like, what are you going to do? You want to be in this space. And so this is kind of what he's talking about. He said, from what I understand, hearing it from sources at the university, he did not like the high profile nature of the celebrities coming to games and the way I was going about NIL, discussing it with the media. He was not comfortable with that. The only way I knew to go about doing NIL is to do high profile. So it's kind of like go big or go home. These remarks came after starting center Jesse Edwards, an international player from the Netherlands, entered the transfer portal, citing Syracuse's inability to work out an NIL deal with him as a reason for his leaving. I mean, when you have a school that there seems to just be a very big divide here, this can create some turmoil, and it makes you wonder what in fact is going to happen with maybe some of the big name recruits that could potentially be coming in when there's this large level of separation.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. It has to happen from the top down. There has to be a lot of collaboration between the athletic department, the president's office, so that they know that, they're on the same page on what's going on publicly. And then also with these collectives. I think it's weird that this is happening there, because it's going to hurt in recruiting for sure. You got to have a robust NIL program. If you need one, hit us up at TriumphNIL.com. Okay, no more shameless plugs. But you have to have that robust program so that these things can move smoothly. We're in the era of NIL right now. You can't be kind of all over the place with this. It needs to be streamlined, seamless, transparency, and all those things. And talk about, what do you call high profile? It's too high profile. That's crazy. Syracuse has been high profile in basketball and football forever. Like, that's the brand. It's it's a Northeast New York style place. So for me to hear that they think that it's too high profile by bringing celebrities and stuff to the game, that's crazy. I mean, that's the best thing you could have happen. Hopefully they'll get back on board, get back on the same page, jump back in the game, because in my opinion, it's gone the wrong way.
Well, talking of high profile, our next headline includes that of Bronny James, the son of LeBron James. Bronny James, he is currently the number one earner in the On3 NIL Top 100, and he is making another NIL move. Certainly helps to have your father as LeBron to help you make those moves, of course. But James will appear in a commercial for Fast X, which, by the way, is, wait for it, the 10th Fast and Furious movie. Did you even know there were like 10 of these Fast and Furious movies out on the market today?
I ain't gonna lie, I didn't know there was 10. I thought like 6 or 7.
I was gauging around 6 or 7, yeah.
I ain't gonna lie, I probably missed 5 of them.
Well, I have to be honest, I was a big Paul Walker fan, so obviously, tragically, Paul Walker, rest in peace, hated that.
It's terrible.
That happened to him, and certainly changed the franchise quite a bit, but they've been going strong. So, LeBron probably won't be the first of these athletes that we're now going to see that trickle down effect with their kids as they're kind of maybe starting to phase out of their careers. I'm not saying that LeBron's retiring anytime soon, but let's be real. Everybody has a shelf life.
Well, he wants to play with his son though. So
I know.
That's, I don't know if that's still, the main goal or what he wants to do with that, but this is a cool way to be, in a way, doing business with your son, like playing in the NBA. Your son is going to be in a commercial from during the playoffs. That's kind of cool. And
it kind of makes me think of Prime Time and him doing the Super Bowl commercial with his family and son. And obviously, he's beyond the playing days, but it is cool that they got to, strike it up in the backyard, so to speak, and play some family friendly football in that commercial. So I think it's a really cool move. He's still a senior in high school. Right now, James has signed deals with PlayStation, Beats by Dre, PSD underwear, and he's a Nike athlete. So Right now, just for those wondering minds alike, Southern Cal and Ohio State still appear to be the front runners to land him. It'll be interesting to kind of see how that tends to go. I guess Syracuse probably won't be on that list. Sorry, Dean. Had to throw that in there for you.
Neither are the Hokies or Rutgers.
I mean, but yeah, I think it's cool to see what he's doing. And I mean, he's such an obvious get for, these type of opportunities. 7.2 million followers on Instagram. I mean, he's obviously got the following, and just his tie in to his father is something special. So I am anxious, like you said, to sort of see how that plays out, and if it works out, the opportunity that they'll eventually get to play together. And maybe that's one way that LeBron is working out his swan song, so to speak. I love it. It's cool stuff.
He is not going to Ohio. I would be shocked if he goes to Ohio State. I'm sorry to ruin that for anybody who has that. I see him staying in California, but what do I know?
Yeah.
Who knows? That's just, something that I was thinking about. Man, I wonder what I would do, because LeBron didn't play at Ohio State. He just was a fan of Ohio State, and he's from Ohio. So
right.
the real tie-in there is just that he's from Ohio.
Yeah, and it's actually crazy because I was in Akron, Ohio just a couple weeks ago for a speaking event, drove by his home. It's still his Ohio home. Which is massive, like this massive compound. I was just like, whoa, but there are a lot of tie-ins in the town, and a lot of things he's done, for charitable cause. And, he's kind of just built that city up, under his name. So like you said, maybe it's an opportunity to do something different, make a name for your family and yourself, in California on a different level. So I think it's pretty cool.
The other side of it is, it still does come back down to basketball too. So what's the best place for him to shine and do his thing on the court is also another thing. But I don't know. I just feel like he's a Cali kid, but we'll see. We'll see.
Two different ways of life. Faux show. All right. So last one, speaking of hoops, hoop stars. You remember that NIL deal that we spoke about several weeks ago? Miss Livy Dunn, the LSU gymnast in trouble. That company
sort of in trouble.
Sorta in trouble.
It was a brand snafu, not like trouble.
Well, it's funny because I really didn't go back and look into this until this obviously headline popped up for us. Angel Reese, the Bayou Barbie, also part of the LSU family. She also partnered with Cactus AI, the artificial intelligence company, and that was something that we know LSU made a statement about. They were not thrilled with Livy's decision to go in that direction. We kind of thought maybe there would be repercussions because obviously using an artificial intelligence company to do your homework, probably a little bit of a conflict of interest, but here we are.
Do we know at the show if
Angel
Reese, Reese, did she sign with them after the Final Four or in the championship, or was it before?
I'm pretty sure it happened afterwards.
After, okay.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that this is something that happened more recently here in the month of April, because I believe the Livy Dunn stuff would have been probably beginning of last month sometime, if I'm not mistaken.
What did I tell y'all last time? These checks must have been, these must have been some pretty substantial deals, because for her to follow up, after, I don't know if it was the president or the provost said something all about, they don't condone that. And then for her to follow up with the deal after that being publicly out there, it must be a pretty significant deal for both of these ladies. So I'm not hating on the deal at all. I don't know the deal. I'm not hating on the situation. I'm just saying that it must have been something lucrative, and their representatives told them, hey, nah, you got to sign this, because there's too much blowback. I mean, for something like this. But we are in the day of AI. We are in the day of AI-assisted things. So I wonder how they spun that it was okay to sign these deals. We need to get Angel and Livy on at the same time. That would be crazy.
Yeah, Dean, we're going to put you up to that. We'll see if we can,
Let's go, Dean.
Deliver. Let's go. Well, just to kind of wrap this segment up, I will say that she did just drop the video that explained how basketball has become one of the top sports in the country, in part thanks to NIL, then mentioned the paid partnership. That cactus logo, I guess, flashed at the end of the video. And so this company, they talk about their success of its 3 previous partnerships prior to this, which was Notre Dame kicker Harrison Leonard, Michigan engineering grad Tao Zhang, and then, of course, we talked about Livy Dunn. So this just continues to grow for them I think that with the amount of users right now, I guess they said that since Livy Dunn's TikTok deal with them, get it. So we talk about the return on investment. They brought an upwards of 2 million users to the site after this had all happened. And basically the monthly payout on the site is, or the subscription for premium access is $9.99 a month. So think about that. Pretty darn good return on investment, if you ask me.
I don't know, Cactus AI, I think it's interesting. I think AI, well, we know that it's now and it's the future. We just got to make sure that it's compliant. That's all. And obviously they have, because these two stars and what they do would not be, I would say they wouldn't be endorsing it.
Is there any part of you, KJ, that has any interest in killing the curiosity and going to check out this platform after our discussions about this now on 2 shows?
No, I've already checked out the platform.
Oh.
Yeah, I've checked out their platform after our last interview or our last comments about this on the other show. Something
you think you'd use personally?
I like AI in general. It's not Cactus specifically. So all of the AI things that are happening, because I'm a designer in my other life as well. So
yes,
when you get to use AI as something that's like inspiration versus using it to cheat is something different, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that, or do your homework. So I think from an inspiration standpoint, and then also I read something recently where an AI bot came up with some cures for some type of cancer. Those are things that, like, when you use AI for good, I think that, yeah, I'm behind it for sure.
That's why we're here, Kevin, because we've been talking about this, right? This is why we talk NIL. If we can use NIL for good, yes, there's always going to be the negatives. There's always going to be things that get corrupt and erupted and, not go the way that we want them to. But we use it for all the good, then we get to hang out and talk about good things with good people like yourself and our good friend, Bobak Hyeri.
NIL Now with Lauren Sisler and Kevin Jones.
If you want to learn more about name, image, and likeness, you need to go to The Source. The NIL Now podcast from Headline Studio and Reddit highlights the biggest storylines.
NIL is not a cherry on top. It needs to be a part of these young men and women's future to, further their careers. You should be able to leave college with something.
Subscribe to NIL Now on Apple, Spotify, Google, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Good segue. What up, Bobak?
What's up, everyone? Hey, it's great here in snowy Minnesota.
No, you just had 70 3 days ago.
This is spring schizophrenia when it comes to the weather. It's going to be below freezing for a bit this week. Then it's going to get to 60. Then we'll probably get a thunderstorm and it'll be back down. So it's a seesaw ride. It's excitement. If you like weather, just wait a minute.
Yeah, no bueno. I was just in Virginia, just talking to Kevin at the top of the show there for the Virginia Tech spring game. Beautiful, sunny blue skies, perfect for tailgating, eating a stadium dog, hanging out with your best friends. It was amazing. With that being said, so at the top of the show, we also talked about how Syracuse, unfortunately, is struggling a little bit on the struggle bus with trying to kind of take advantage of the NIL space. And there's some divide on who's for it, who's against it. And it's obviously creating some turmoil. And I'd love to get your take, because this segues right into our discussion about James Franklin, who talks about the efforts at Penn State. And he basically says, look, you can't pick and choose what you're going to compete in. Give us a little backstory on this and what the Redditors are saying about James Franklin and this take on NIL at this point.
Absolutely, because Penn State, you always have to kind of put a little bit of perspective on their football program, because for many years, it was run by one guy, Joe Pa, and it had a very kind of, and setting aside obviously the scandal that ended it, he was very famous for running a program in a very old school manner. So a lot of the Penn State fans are used to occasionally competing for championships and winning them in a realm where, it was operated by the same guy. Everything was very traditional. And so there's a lot of push and pull with how college football programs need to operate now to stay competitive, and the way a lot of the older alumni seem to operate. So the big kind of backstory that's going on here is James Franklin was sort of talking about what was going on with sort of the board of trustees at Penn State. I believe they do elections with their alumni base. and how there was a sort of, I guess, a movement within the alumni base to potentially oust two of the trustees, one of which is actually Jay Paterno, who is the son of Joe Pa, just because they feel that they aren't as proactive in terms of supporting the program in a way that would match what's going on now. Because that's been something, Franklin's been all about this ever since he got to Penn State, because obviously he was the second coach since the scandal. And so he's trying to get the program into back to where it was, a national program. And it's been doing really well on the field. You know, he was like, you know, he'd previously been at Vanderbilt, which is usually not the prime, you know, he's like, we were the bottom of the SEC and we still had better facilities at the time he got there than Penn State. So he's been doing a lot of this kind of agitation to try and get money towards bringing the program to where he thinks it should be. And there's a lot of Penn State fans who are on our CFB. So we get a lot of their thoughts on that. And a lot of them really seem to support what's been going on with James Franklin. They've seen enough success on the field to believe in it, because I think that was also an ongoing thing, because Franklin's one of those guys who sounds like a hype machine where you don't know if there's any there, but he's proven it. I think that was when he first got there. They're like, okay, dude, we got it. You had a few winning seasons at Vandy. You know, you're sounding like but it turns out once you can actually back your words, then people are like, okay, I'm on Team Franklin. And we've seen a lot of the Penn State fans kind of go in that direction. So you get guys like P.S. Grew, who's a Penn State fan, who just wants them to vote out those two board of trustees in order to kind of get things going. And, you know, I think a lot of fans are surprised that the Paterno family still is involved with the board of trustees, but they have a big one too. There's like 39 trustees. So there's kind of a push and pull of whether or not he has more influence than he may have, or if it's just that he's such an outgoing, loud voice. And I'm not saying that to say he's a bad voice, but I mean, he likes to state his mind a lot out there, and he's got the name to catch the attention of the alumni. So I think that's what we're seeing out there, in addition to trying to figure things out, because I think there's a lot of tension too. A lot of, I think, their basketball fans feel that NIL let them down, but the football team, as Franklin's talking about this past week, they want to make sure football is something that's staying competitive. And Penn State's Office of War said Franklin has constantly argued this. It's been one of its most consistent stances. The highest level of FBS is an unending arms race, and he's always been vocal to boosters in the administration about it. More money for facilities, more money for his staff, and now more money for the players.
I think that Franklin's right on with everything that he's doing and trying to rally the fan base and the supporters to keep Penn State or get them back where they need to be. That's been, you know, considered in national championships. I think that, you know, it's always going to be some, you know, conflict or tension between an old regime and a new regime when some people are left over. They're never going to see all the way eye to eye, because obviously, like you said, Franklin is coming in with that new energy, and he does have a lot of influence that, you know, and it depends on if you're a basketball, football school, but it's the president of the university and his side, you know, with the provost and stuff like that on campus. And then you have the athletic department and their head coaches. And those people do have influence within the spaces that make decisions like this. So he's just trying to get it back, right? He's just trying to get it back. And, you know, Jay is probably like, hey, hold up, bro. Like, my dad, you know, so it's a, you know, catch-22. But I think that Franklin is at the helm of it right now. And I think that those people will rally behind him because he's the guy, and he's a good dude. Like, and he's been bringing it back. So he's probably the wrong person to try to go against in these type of situations.
You know, he put something really well in when he was kind of reviewing what he'd said over the years. He's kind of like, look, I was harping on facilities. I was harping on this because once a new thing pops up, if we're not caught up on this other thing, we're going to be completely left behind. It's like, we got the facilities in place. Great. Now we got the staff salaries in place. Great. Now we have the ability and the time to focus on getting the latest thing, which is NIL, where they need it to be to maintain what they want to be. Because as you said, you know, they want to be a top program. They're in the Big Ten. This isn't a place where you can kind of take it easy or not stay relentless.
So speaking of relentless there, Bobak, our buddy, John Ruiz, continues to be the relentless man that shows up on the headlines of many of our shows. And I guess you've done some unpacking there from a legal standpoint, financial standpoint, all the things. And I really love this article, as this is our next sort of topic of conversation coming from the Action Network, Darren Rovell. So obviously one of the top NIL boosters, someone that's made their name with the Miami girls, the Cavender twins. And basically the opening line on Darren Ravel's article says the largest name behind name, image, and likeness might need a Hail Mary.
Well, yeah, it's an interesting moment for LifeWallet. And obviously it's hard to separate LifeWallet from John Ruiz and the fact that he has hooked so much of it on NIL. And I think maybe to some aspect of it, it's also marketing for part of his business and the part that I think most of the public associates with a name like LifeWallet. So Darren's reporting, he kind of talks about the fact that their stock for this publicly traded company, I guess it's been below $1 for now. It has been below $1 for 30 days. And if you're on the NASDAQ, that means it can kind of put you on a little bit of a probation to decide whether or not they're going to keep you listed. It doesn't mean you're completely sunk as a publicly traded stock, but it isn't a good thing. So I did a little more digging of what exactly it means, what exactly is causing them some problems. Initially, what caused the real shakeup and what Darren really hooked onto was they had to basically say our last document that we filed, a federal SEC document, the numbers were misstated and we can't back them. We can't support that. And it sounds like part of it you could say in a charitable way is they just have some bad, they need to just tighten up how they take care of their accounting. I wouldn't say anything there was fraudulent in the sense that they were trying to trick anybody. It sounds like they just ended up with a lower number than they had expected. So for what it sounds like and what they've been projecting as earnings, the company just hasn't been meeting those earnings and has been substantially below that. Because what I did not realize, and I'm sure those who do investments hopefully do this kind of homework, the company actually started as an interesting idea. I mean, it's based on what his own practice as a lawyer. It was a company that basically was, quote, digging into the lucrative and largely untapped well of recoverable insurance proceeds. What does that mean? It means when people were charging things, when insurance companies weren't paying out and things were going to Medicare, he's saying we're going to now sue on behalf of Medicare and collect that money that should have been and collect a portion of it. Sue on behalf of people or incorrect medical insurance billing and payouts and legal fees. So there's something there. I mean, if it's untapped, there's a whole big market out there. It doesn't sound like what LifeWallet does. When most people think of a company that says LifeWallet, it really doesn't match that. Apparently it was a different company. So all of this came to a head when earnings just were not where they had planned them to be. And that has put them in a bit of damage control. You know, over the last 9 months, I guess ending in one of their, they were earning only, I believe, a fraction of the revenue they had expected to earn. So the stock hasn't been doing great, and they're trying to bring that up. And I'm sure that's where a bit of the fact that Ruiz is a passionate Canes fan certainly helps. It doesn't help, though, with, I think, some of the PR. When you look at RCFB, I mean, the number one comment on all of this from one prior 9909 is never in a million years would I have guessed that a program with Miami's sterling reputation would have a major booster involved in shady business dealings.
I think, Kevin, you're going to have to come up with a nickname for Weeze because we keep having him on the show, and I feel like we can't keep talking about this man without a nickname that you are so good at filing for over there.
Let's say the Ruiz sneeze. God bless you in this situation. We'll see if you come up out of this one. I don't know what that is.
The Ruiz sneeze. Oh, the Ruiz sneeze. I like it. That was good.
You're listening to NIL Now.
All right, now time for our third and final segment. And this now becomes a friend of the show, Mr. Brent Axe. He's a sports columnist for Syracuse.com, the Post Standard, where he covers Syracuse Orange athletics. And who better to join us for that interview today as Kevin Jones slides right out and Dean Zolkowski, our producer, slides right in. And so I'm going to let Dean ask the first question today of Mr. Axe, because I guess the first question is, do we call you Professor Axe? Do we call you Mr. Axe? Do we just call you Brent? I mean, like, I don't know what we're doing here.
You have graduated. You may call me Brent. It's great to be on, by the way. Thanks for having me, guys.
If I can call you Brent now, Professor Axe, I'll call you Brent as a graduated student.
I mean, Professor Axe is a pretty sweet name, I got to admit.
All right, I'll call you. We'll go Professor Axe.
Okay.
And now, Lauren, this is a little nerve-wracking because Professor Axe was my sports interviewing professor. So I'm now interviewing, like the tables have turned. But who better to have on with all that's going on? We talked at the top of the show about, how Syracuse is kind of handling their NIL situation. We'll get into, Adam Weitsman and Jesse Edwards. But I think just first, Professor Axe is someone who has been around, a Power 5 school such as Syracuse. How have you kind of seen, NIL change the way that you're maybe covering the sport or covering the athletes? And how much have you kind of seen this whole landscape change, with NIL being introduced, into everything?
It's been the biggest sea change I can remember in covering college athletics, because, think about what college athletics has always been. You don't pay the athletes. That if you love college sports, it's because they didn't get paid, right? It's amateur athletics. Well, now, not only are you paying these guys, it often determines who's coming in and who's coming out, right? What you're doing in recruiting, what you're doing in the transfer portal. It's the biggest game changer I've ever seen in college athletics. It's only a couple of years old. It is fascinating to me that this happened and is continuing to happen, and we're all kind of figuring out the rules as we go along.
So you talk about fascination. One person we're very fascinated in is Adam Weitsman. The big stops that he's thrown out and getting, celebrity types on campus and just bringing these recruits kind of these big, opportunities and sort of this big feel. And it's kind of like go big or go home is his mindset. And it seems like there's not a lot of agreement with some other folks and other decision makers on campus. And with that being said, he's decided to step away from Syracuse at this time. Does this surprise you at all? And really, how does this impact the school in your opinion?
It did surprise me a little bit, Lauren, because he's been there for the past 4 years. Adam he literally sits right behind Jim Boeheim, right? Jim Boeheim stroll on the sideline. You will see Adam. You will see whatever celebrity guest he has brought in. Adam timed out very well with this change we've talked about in NIL. He is a visible presence, not only to bring a little flair to the JMA Wireless Dome, but if you're an incoming recruit or you're a transfer, like he is the physical manifestation of that dude's going to pay you, right? Like there are other people behind the scenes, and Syracuse has collectives like any other school, but he was the visible representation of the modern way of college athletics, right? And, we've heard so much about boosters and what boosters do and who they are. Like he was the guy. So for this to come to an abrupt end, and of course, this times out with, Jim Boeheim stepping aside as the coach, and Adam and Jim have been, great friends over the years. They've talked about that publicly. Adam has a number of times. I was really surprised to see this kind of come to an end abruptly. And Adam told me it was based on the lack of a relationship with the chancellor, not feeling welcome by the chancellor at Syracuse University. Syracuse declined to speak about this publicly, so I can only go on what Adam tells us. But for this to be like he's the guy and he's just doing everything he can to help Syracuse recruit and stand out in the NIL game, that's important. You guys talk about this all the time. Everybody's doing this, but how do you stand out? How are you unique in this game? And Syracuse had one of the most unique things out there in all of the Power 5 of all college sports in the way that Adam was doing this.
Well, and it's interesting too, because you talk about standing out. And I think that's been college athletics from kind of jump, is like keeping up with the Joneses, right? I cover college football primarily, but it's like every time I step foot on campus, it's always like the next big facility, the next big thing that stands out. And now that has certainly shifted into the NIL world. So I certainly think that's a unique perspective, and Syracuse certainly doing that in a very unique and a different way. And so with that being said, what challenges would you say that Syracuse faces in the world of NIL, especially with competing against some of the other schools in the ACC? Do you see there to be, maybe different challenges that they face that some of the other schools might not, or does it just look different?
I think that's it. It looks different, right? Like Syracuse has always, had a challenge in terms of facilities. Now the JMA Wireless Dome has been renovated in recent years. They have a corporate name. The Carrier Dome was one of the first college athletic facilities to have a corporate name, right? And now they've changed that over. And Syracuse is always going to struggle in the facilities game and the infrastructure game. Look, those things are important, but infrastructure is not sexy, right? Every fan that follows a college athletic program knows you need facilities, right? Everybody talks about that. But NIL is the thing that stands out. You got this recruit because you paid him this much money. Recently Syracuse lost Jesse Edwards to West Virginia. And we have heard reportedly what those numbers were, what he was offered, and just how the game is being played, right? So based on Adam stepping aside, and we wrote a story on Syracuse.com recently. My colleague Donna DeToto wrote it. One of the heads of the collectives here in Syracuse, literally said, we couldn't compete with that. We could not give Jesse Edwards what he needed and what he wanted. And even said in that article, a pretty direct shot at, fans and donors out there. I think the quote was something along the lines of, quite frankly, we're not keeping up the way we need to in NIL. So here you have somebody who runs a collective saying we're not there. So the challenges are just as much there for Syracuse NIL-wise without Adam, with Adam, than they are in everything else they try to compete with, the big-time schools. Forget the rest of the Power Five guys. Within the ACC, all you got to do is, who are you chasing? Who is at the top of the list? You're chasing Clemson. And Syracuse in no way, shape, or form, in any way, compares with Clemson. They've beat him in 2018 on the football field and almost beat him a couple other times, including this past season. But everything else, they are so far behind, and I don't know how they catch up.
Yeah, Professor Axe, you mentioned, Jim Boeheim no longer being, the head coach of the basketball program, although he's still, I guess, kind of involved with SU athletics, and obviously Weitsman being gone as well. What kind of challenges do you think Adrian Autry steps into in this NIL world? Obviously, he's been part of, a basketball coaching staff, but like you mentioned, Jesse Edwards gone. Joe Girard is in the transfer portal as well. College basketball coaches in general, maybe a new one like Adrian Autry. What are some of the issues with that?
Well, I think Adrian has some advantages. He definitely has some of the challenges we talked about. But let's look at some of the advantages yet. Not to turn your question on its head, Dean, but I think he's very tapped into the AAU world, okay? He knows the coaches. He knows the players. He coached in that world. He is very tapped in there. And they know him and they respect him, right? Just recently, two players that have come back to Syracuse that were in other places, J.J. Starling and Chance Westry, cited relationships with Adrian Autry as the reason they came back to Syracuse. Now, we'd be naive to think that NIL and some of these other things don't factor in, and playing time is important too. But even when J.J. Starling left Syracuse, New York, he's a Syracuse native, went to Baldwinsville High School here locally, went to Notre Dame. They stayed in touch with him. The relationship maintained. Same thing with Chance Westry. And both those players noted that they loved the honesty and the relationships that were there. So, yes, NIL is important, and playing in that game is important. Nobody's going to deny that. But how you overcome that? Well, maybe I'll take less money and go play at Syracuse because I like Adrian Autry, or I have a relationship with him, or my coach has a relationship with him. So I think that is going to be the huge advantage that he has. Now, the disadvantage, of course, is he's not a Hall of Famer. He's not a known name in the broad circles. How much Jim Boeheim could just get in a room and get in on a kid's list because he's Jim Boeheim, because he's a Hall of Famer, because he's been there forever and coached in 4 or 5 Final Fours. And to this point, Adrian Autry's been the guy behind the scenes helping orchestrate that. So I think that would be the disadvantage, is he just doesn't have the brand name broadly, but he has the name where it's important.
All right, and Professor Axe, I'm going that direction. Professor Axe, because it sounds good and cool. What, in your opinion, really needs to change? You've been kind of around this space, and I like what you kind of hit on, because when you're recruiting now, obviously players, and there's coaching changes, obviously we're going to see a shift. There's now another wrinkle between obviously NIL and the transfer portal that adds a whole nother layer to the coaching circles and the criteria and who's going to fit the bill, who's not going to fit the bill. What do you think needs to happen in order for Syracuse to get back into that realm of being able to compete and hold on to some of these big names and really become kind of a name brand in the ACC as it always has been, but to be able to compete and really, go up against these other Power 5 schools that are just keeping up with the Joneses, as we talked about?
It's the chicken and the egg thing, right? If you win, you draw players, but in order to win, you got to get players. So I think what Syracuse has to do, frankly, is find not only its next Adam Weitsman, but the next 4 or 5 Weitsmans. Maybe the next people that do this don't do it the way he did. Maybe they don't have Josh Allen on speed dial and all these celebrities on speed dial like he does, but you have to be out there. Syracuse has a lot of people behind the scenes that donate and are a part of this. And they have a couple of people that have put their names on facilities and things of that nature. They have to figure out a way to send that message to those recruits and those transfers about how they're going to do this, right? So Adam did it one way. Maybe if Syracuse felt that that was too much of a shine on him individually, that's not that they want to do it, fine. But you've got to send a message to recruits out there about what stands out about Syracuse. Because frankly, the on-the-field performance for football and the on-the-court performance for basketball has not, for the most part, been up to the standard it needs to in recent years. The football team made a bowl game this year, but it's only the second bowl game they've made in the 7-year tenure of Dino Babers. Syracuse basketball has not made the NCAA tournament 3 of the last 4 years. Now, to be fair, one of those years there wasn't a tournament in 2020. But if there was one, they weren't making it. So what they used to sell was, we win here. Well, you don't win as much as you used to. So what else is the benefit if I'm a recruit or I'm a transfer that's going to make me say, I'm going to Syracuse?
Yeah, all really good points there. Last thing I want to ask you, did Dean pass your class with flying colors? Is this like a HIPAA violation? Is this,
It's fair game.
Dean was the one student in the 6-year history that I have taught at Syracuse University who failed my class. No, I'm kidding. Dean was the star. Not only did I know Dean in my class, Dean worked with us at Syracuse.com a little bit, and he's a superstar. And you better enjoy him while he lasts here, Lauren, because he's going to be soaring and in bigger and better places very, very soon. I can't wait to see what his future holds, but he was great. I enjoy talking to Dean, even off the air, if you will, and talking to him through text and just checking in on him in life and what he's up to. So the guy's got a good one here.
Aww,
no matter what he calls
Dean,
Professor or Brent or whatever the case may be.
Thank you, Professor Axe. You scared me. Scared me at first there. I was like, whoa.
Where's he going with this, right? Oh. Oh, that's good stuff. Hey, well, we appreciate it, Professor Axe. Thank you so much for joining us today. Of course, you can follow him on Twitter at Brent Axe Media. That's Brent AXE Media on Twitter. And then, of course, you can follow us at NIL Now Show on Twitter, as well as the Reddit channel. Tell a friend, let us know what you think about the show. We'd love to get your comments and weigh in on some things. If you have some guests that you might want to hear from, let us know. And then, of course, a big thank you to Bobak, the Reddit College Football team, for their help. You can follow them at Reddit College Football on Twitter and online at Reddit College Football. I'm Lauren Sisler. My co-host is Kevin Jones. A big thanks to, of course, Dean Zolkowski, our producer, our audio engineer, Colin Schmaling, and our executive producers, Richard Diamond, Selena Roberts, and Scott Broder. Until next week, we'll see you later.
Thanks for listening to NIL Now, presented by Headline Studio and Reddit.